Hi, my name is Tara McGregor and I'm working with my colleagues at Research Scotland to capture and share some of the rich learning that's come out of the Changing Lives programme on behalf of everyone that's been involved. Today we're recording a conversation with Alex Johnston from Spirit of 2012. And this conversation's really aimed at people working in the sport and physical activity space who would seek funding for programmes and projects that they want to deliver that bring about some kind of wider change for people or communities. So using sport and physical activity in an intentional way to deliver wider change. It might also be of interest to more community-based projects who are beginning to explore the opportunity to use sport and physical activity to deliver some wider change as well. But it's very much aimed at people who are on the funded side, so people that are seeking funding. We hope to share some of the most significant learning from the Changing Lives programme today from Alex's perspective, because he's been involved in it for a really long time. You might want to watch this conversation by yourself or listen to it with a cup of tea. It's just under 25 minutes long. Or you might want to watch it with colleagues or other team members, in which case we've included some prompt questions at the end of the conversation that we hope might be useful for you, either to think about what the insights might have been for you and how you apply them in your own work, or as a bit of a discussion piece with other people if you've watched it together. We've also included some information about resources at the end of the conversation as well, in case you want to follow up and pick up something else that's come out of the Changing Lives programme. I've been working at the interface of funded and funding organisations in Scotland for a couple of decades, and I'm really looking forward to exploring some of the learning from Changing Lives today with Alex and getting some insider information for you. Hello Alex, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. This is one of two conversations we're having today. So we're having one that's aimed at funders, people working on the funding side, and this conversation is going to be about organisations who are looking for funding.
Yeah.
And we're imagining, I think, that these are predominantly organisations that work in the sport and physical activity space, but it might also be other community-based organisations that are exploring the possibility of sport and physical activity as a vehicle for change. Does that
that makes sense.
What we're
That both makes sense.
That's brilliant. So the first thing I wanted to ask you to do was to tell people a little bit about Changing Lives and what it is.
Yeah. So Changing Lives, which is kind of short term for Changing Lives through sport and physical activity, is essentially about using sport to intentionally bring about change. And that intentionality, that change can happen at an individual level or at a community level. And it addresses community need. So it's responding to community needs. So we're using sport as a mechanism. To give an example, it could be, so you're in a community where there's quite a high population of older women who are isolated. So you could use walking netball as a mechanism for getting them out of the house, bringing them together, forming friendships and creating that kind of cohesion. Or it could be in a community where you've got issues with antisocial behaviour. So it's about using sport as a way of diverting young people away from that. All of this is happening. It has been happening for years and it continues to happen. Sometimes people don't know that they're doing Changing Lives work when they're actually doing Changing Lives work. And my job over the years has been to promote that approach to delivering sport, but also to let others see that in themselves and encourage them to go further.
Yeah, so there's a job there to help people articulate it, isn't there, as well?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So when I've heard you talk about Changing Lives before, I've often picked up on that word intentionality. So for people who are looking at getting funding, that's an important part of it, isn't it? The idea that you're being very clear about your intentions, about how you're using sport and physical activity. But it's also that purpose really being about broader change. So I think you described it as being the method or the means or the mechanism to deliver that impact or change for people, communities and so on.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I was just going to say on that, you know, that there's a lot of people working in this space that Changing Lives, and they go, what do you mean by intentionality?
Yeah.
And actually what we do mean by it is that that's what you set out to do at the onset. You bake it into the DNA of your project. If you're kind of taking a plan, do, review model, you'd be in that planning early stage, okay, I'm going to use sport to do this.
Yeah.
That's it. Because I've looked at my community and there's a need, and they need to respond to that community need. No funder's going to fund any project that doesn't have community need or need at the heart of it. So that's why. So you get intentionality, responding, using sport to respond to a need. And that's essentially the kind of key parts of changing lives.
And I think I'm right in saying that the research backs up the importance of that intentionality at the planning stage. So you've seen, haven't you, that the projects that were very clear about that are the ones that have had the biggest impact?
Yes, yeah. And I think what that is, it's a very good life lesson about focus. Because I think that is, I've been working in funding now for well over 20 years. And I've seen drift happen with projects because they don't have a clear focus. They've scattered themselves, spread themselves too thin, they've lost track. Whereas with changing lives, one of its strengths is, okay, here's my intentionality, here's what I'm going to do, Tara. I am going to go out there, I'm going to get all those young people off the street, I'm going to get them taking part in judo, and that's going to change their lives. Yeah. And that's what they're going to do. Yeah. And it's just that they can talk about it elsewhere because they can remember what it is they want to do, So
Absolutely.
for that, for me, is quite key, very important. That focus part of it, intentionality brings that to your work.
Yeah. And it's so important for people that want to secure funding.
Absolutely. You won't get it unless otherwise. And actually, it's probably how you're going to succeed. Because you're probably, you know where it is, you've got your eyes on the prize. I know what I want to get happen at the end of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I also just wanted to ask you, before we go into some of the questions that I had, just to tell me a little bit about the role you've had in Spirit 2012, so that people can understand that and where you're coming from with the learning that you want to share.
My work started way back in 2013 when I joined Spirit, on secondment from the Big Lottery Fund here in Scotland, and I've been there ever since. But really what I've been doing during that time is taking forward the sporting legacy of Glasgow 2014. And we've been working with Scottish Government on that, and then more laterally in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's about that, I think, I've lost count. We've been working with Sport Scotland, Scottish Government, the Robertson Trust on that kind of changing life stuff. But my work is wider than changing lives. And what I've been doing is really helping the sector to actually become better at change, become better at outcomes, trying to upskill people. There's a lot of people that works in sport, they're great people, they're doing wonderful stuff, but they just need a wee bit help with stuff. They need to be upskilled about what makes a good funding application, what makes a good outcomes-based project, how you can design projects meaningfully as well. So I've been trying to do all of that. It's quite a public-facing job. So I've been out in the field, and I've been across Scotland. I've been across the UK, but in Scotland, I've been across the whole Scotland, in various different places, trying different sports and doing different things, and seeing lots of sports-based projects that are working in communities that are making a huge difference.
Yeah, you're seeing the impact of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So in this conversation, I'm very conscious that you sit at that interface between the funders and the projects in the sport and physical activity space that have been funded, and some of the ones you're in contact as well with some of the ones who haven't been able to secure funding, perhaps at certain points. And I want to try and give people a little bit of behind the scenes knowledge about what happens amongst funders. And one of the things I specifically wanted to ask you about was something that a lot of people are often surprised about, that funders talk to each other. And I wondered if you could just give people a little bit of a flavour for the kinds of conversations that funders have in Scotland, and maybe a little insight around the partnership that's gone behind Changing Lives, so that they can understand that, because I don't think it's commonly understood. Yeah,
and that kind of happens in informal and formal settings. So the formal settings could be things like the Scottish Funders Forum or the Scottish Grantmakers Trust, where we come together, we sit around the table, we discuss things, we have conversations. Scotland's small, we all know each other, and particularly in our funding sector, where, this is the third funder that I've worked for. And I've got friends that I know we've worked for one funder, now working for another. So we know each other. So there's that informal thing goes on. We all turn up at the same events. We're all usually invited to the same things. So those conversations go. But if we hear about issues with organisations, like, often sometimes worrying about the fraudulent nature of funding, but even just the mismanagement of funds or issues, that word gets out pretty quickly. We do talk to each other, particularly if you're an organisation that has funding from multiple sources. So we can spot things, and and I think that's good. We should be talking to each other as a sector. I mean, the partnership, the Changing Lives partnership, is one of the best things that I've ever done and been involved in that long-term partnership working. 4 organisations, very different from each other. Spirit of 2012, the Robertson Trust, Sport Scotland, Scottish Government, kind of coming together. At first, a wee bit like, okay, what's in this for me? That kind of self-interest stuff. But then gradually, as we built these strong relationships and became really trusted relationships between funders, that it became 4 organisations working for a common interest. And we're still here as a partnership all these years later. I think I said 5, 6, 7, but I think it's about 8 years now that we've been working in partnership around this space. So funders can come together and work together, and we often talk to each other.
Brilliant. That's really helpful to understand. I want to ask you a few questions about the learning that there might be from this programme for organisations, particularly in the sport and physical activity space, who want to secure funding for something that they're already involved in that's evolving, or one of those projects that people often have that they've wanted to do maybe for a really long time. And I wanted to ask you, really, what would you love them to understand about how funders take decisions about funding applications? What are the key messages you would really like to get across to them?
There's a couple of things that always kind of stick out for me now, and I say this to folk, and some of the first one might sound a bit strange, but the first one is focusing on quality. Now, I don't mean quality of the project as I've designed a quality project. I'm talking about the quality of your actually written application that the funder is going to see, because that's your first interface with the funder. If it's poor quality, if it's littered with spelling mistakes, incomplete sections, cut and paste that can spot it, that kind of thing, going over word limits or doing all that, that the person who's sitting assessing that, who probably has another 50 other applications sitting on their desk at the same time, will make a judgment on your project based on the quality of your application. So I say to folk, just spend the time on making sure that the application reads well, that it doesn't have any of those typos and all that sort of things. So my advice to them is just make sure you get a fresh pair of eyes on that, you know, because I think that actually it's really big problem if you're writing applications and they're just not going anywhere. So for me, that's a big concern. Make sure you have that quality of application. The other challenge we have is that we have a sports sector full of brilliant people. They're doers. They're people who like to do stuff. They like to get in there. But actually, a good project's not just about doing stuff. It's about planning, it's about doing, and it's about reviewing. And that doesn't happen enough. So what we can get in sport is a lot of waste, where people just go straight into doing stuff. So I'm just going to deliver basketball in Drumchapel and get everybody playing basketball, even though nobody asked for it. Even though you've not planned out when that's going to happen. So for me, it's about that kind of structural stuff, about actually thinking about what you do in a kind of plan, do, review basis. Funders will understand that language. They'll understand that actually, okay, they've planned this, here's what they're going to do. Oh, and they're going to review it to make sure that they're measuring the impact and they demonstrate that as well. So that would be something that I would recommend people have in their heads when they're doing that. And it can be quite light touch. It doesn't have to be huge, does it? No. And you've also talked about the importance of outcomes as well, and about how, I know when we talked about that funder experience, we were discussing how for lots of people in the sport and physical activity space, they've not necessarily had that focus around outcomes that maybe other parts of like third sector organisations that maybe have been funded in that way for a long time, they maybe don't have that experience that they have. So you talked about those outcomes being important. So can you tell us a little bit about that, about the articulation of those? And I think I came from the kind of community sector, as in working for a funder that funded the wider community sector. We didn't fund sport. Occasionally got things around getting people active. I feel that sector and that side of it is further ahead than the sports sector in the world of outcomes and being able to articulate an outcome and understanding what an outcome is and how you use it. Sport, I feel, is a bit behind on that. And I think that's a product of many years of a kind of funding regime, a kind of culture which was around outputs. How many people took part? That was all they were interested in. But I think sports moved on and realised that actually it's not just about counting the number of people who took part, it's the difference that the taking part can lead to too. That these two are really important. So I've been working with the sector a lot around that outcome side of things. They've struggled. There's some who've really struggled. Sport Scotland have been trying to do support, but there's wider support out there.
Yeah.
So organisations like Evaluation Sport Scotland have got lots of resources that can help organisations that are applying for funding and they've been asked to articulate outcomes. Go on there. And my advice is always 2 or 3 killer outcomes is better than a lot of outcomes.
Absolutely.
Don't give us a list of outcomes because you think that'll appeal to us. It won't actually. Absolutely. It's just to be very focused on it. I can do 2 things that I can do them really, really well. And essentially that's it.
Yeah.
So,
I know in the work that I've done around outcomes, most of the time that I spend with organisations is saying, we don't need 12, we just need 3 or 4. And people really struggle because there is still that feeling that the more you write down, the larger number of outcomes, the bigger your impact must be, but that's not the case.
And I used to do a wee test with people around outcomes because I would say, oh, but you've got this. They would tell me about their project and I'd say, so what are your outcomes? If they can't articulate to them because they can't remember them because there's too many, for me that's a problem.
They're not bedded in. Yeah. That's really interesting actually. Okay, so that's what you would like people to understand about how decisions are taken. Anything that you would ask them to pay attention to that you've not covered there? So we've talked about quality, we've talked about outcomes. Anything else? Yeah,
the other one just is that do not assume that the funder knows anything about you. Yeah, and that is a big problem for a lot of them. They think, okay, I don't know that.
Yeah.
But I would not assume any of that at all. So when you're writing an application, don't just assume, oh, they must know who I am. I'm a sports club in Glasgow. But I would work on the assumption that the person who's likely to be assessing an application has probably got about another 50 applications that they need to do.
Yeah.
They're not going to spend too much time.
Yeah.
So you need to make a good impression. And a quality application makes a good impression, one that's very clear makes a good impression, and one that uses that kind of plan, do, review model where they understand what it's actually going to be about. So, but I wouldn't leave any assumptions in there. This is a competitive world around funding, so you're competing against others. You really want to stand out. You know.
And people that work in sport and physical activity are competitive, so they just have to channel that into the application.
Channel that into the application is a really good idea. Actually, that would be my one call for them. Is that just kind of start to think
channel that. Yeah, I mean, I definitely find that space to be full of people who are competitive in a good way, and also very growth and improvement focused. So they've got the skills. It's just putting it in the right.
I remember back in the day when I was a funding officer, way back in the day when I was at the big lottery fund. And I would be given my workload and I would be given a pile of applications to assess by a given time.
Yeah.
I have not got much flexibility in that.
No.
So I also know, okay, £10 million worth of applications here and we've only got 5.
Yes.
I'm going to have to reject a lot.
Yes.
So I'm actually looking to reject.
Yes.
So I go out looking for that.
Yeah.
And the ones that do are the ones that have the spelling mistakes or they don't look good or the outcomes are too many. I look for the faults to do it, you know, so it's kind of good to just beat me at that and just say, I know what he's going to do. I know what this assessor's going to do.
Give myself a good chance. Absolutely. I'm also very conscious there's a lot of misconceptions about funders. I wondered, is there anything you would like to tell people to worry about less?
Yeah. One is there's always this worry that funders will want to take your money back off you. It's not true. We don't. We want you to succeed. It looks bad on us if you don't succeed because after all, we gave you the money for a reason. We made you a grant offer because we thought this was going to be a good project. So we kind of want it to succeed because it kind of looks bad on us as well. You know? So there's a myth around that. Most funders will work with you. I think if you having conversations with funder because you're having a relationship, you know, and that relationship, I would say, starts with that very first phone call, which is picking up the phone and just asking this funder, here's my project, do you think it fits? And if it does, yes, you can go. But if not, then you've saved yourself a lot of work and planning forms and all that. And so that relationship then starts. Involve them. Anyone, invite them to things. I love going to things. I get more from being out and visiting projects than I do from reading forms. And really just approach it on that basis that you're having a relationship with your funder. And that actually what you can do is that if you're really serious about your impact measurement and you're focusing in on what works and what doesn't work, and you're having an ongoing conversation with funder, you go back and say, I'd like to change this. Funders are open to change if it's based on, here's what I've done, I've reviewed this. My impact measurement and my evaluation of this work has shown that this is not working, so I'd like to do this. The funder is highly likely to say yes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why they would say, no, keep doing something that's not working. But you know what I mean by that.
Absolutely.
You're bringing evidence to the table to say that. So I think the myth I'm trying to dispel is that we do want you to succeed.
Yeah.
It's not a trial. We just wish we had more money and we could give everybody projects, but we can't money for projects.
Absolutely. I do hear that fear a lot, and I think some of it probably does come from bad experiences in the past where people have had money taken back, and you do still find it a little bit, but for the most part, funders are more
very rare that happens, though. It's a very rare occasion because we don't. Some funders don't even have mechanisms for taking money back.
Absolutely. If you wanted to give it back, you couldn't. But there's a bigger message there that's about building. I've heard you say before that it's about a relationship, not a transaction.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's a really important thing for people to understand, that they can build rapport, build trust, get to know each other, and sort of mutually benefit from that relationship. As you said, funders want to achieve outcomes and change, positive change.
And they also want to learn. So funders want to learn. I've learned more about working sport in the last 10 years than I had the previous 20 odd years of that, because I wasn't working it. I've learned from these projects that and these partners that we've worked with at either national or local level, you know, that deep learning. Funders are really interested in learning as well, because we can't fund everybody. Absolutely. But what we can do is push out learning to say, here's how good projects work. You know, what works, and use that, take that approach. So we can change practice and delivery, but not necessarily through funding, but using learning as well as funding those others.
That makes a lot of sense. So there's that misconception around coming back to have a discussion. So there's something there as well about understanding that relationship's flexible, and that you need to have that ongoing dialogue. Before you apply, as you've said, encouraging people to pick up the phone when things are going well, getting you along, involved, but also if things are changing. I'm not going to say going wrong, but changing, evolving. There's a need to adapt the approach to discuss that with your funder as well. Yeah,
I mean, I always came at the failure side of things for a project, which is that actually failure happens.
Absolutely.
And it's what we learn from that failure.
Absolutely.
And so it's fine. And also, if you're encouraging innovation or wanting people to try new things to do and work with hard groups, you know, the least active, you will fail a lot of that. And you will learn from your failure and you do it. And we were always very comfortable with that as a funder. And I think others have kind of come into that space, other funders, that actually the chances of you getting an application form and that project looking exactly the same what it was 3 years later is very, very little. It's not going to happen.
You're not expecting it. And if it does, you sort of
I would be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, just a few more questions because I'm quite conscious of our time. Let me see. What would you say? Any other final messages I would say that we've missed there that you would want to get across to projects that are maybe those that have knocked at a few doors and been knocked back? Any other sort of final messages to them?
Couple of final messages. One is, keep at it. You need to be tenacious when you're in the funding game. You need to get used to rejection. That's what it is, a competition. So but just keep going. And sometimes it takes a lot of time. From your original idea, it could be 9 months before you have money in the bank, you know, and that kind of stuff. And the also thing would be that there's lots of support out there. Tap into it. Any funder that you're going to, the first thing you should do is go to their website and have a look. See what that tells you. If you're still confused, pick up the phone. Phone them and have a conversation. But also if you think, I don't know what an outcome is, then go to places like Evaluation Sport Scotland and Sport Scotland, who've got resources on their website that will do that. So tap into what you can get before you even get to writing it down on a piece of paper. Absolutely. Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. What would you say, Alex, overall has been the biggest success of changing lives that you would want to share with projects that are involved in delivery? I think there's a couple of things on that. One is that, so the original ambition of this partnership way back in the day was to embed the Changing Lives approach in the sporting system in Scotland. For me, the success is we've done that. And now in 2025, we're actually looking back and saying, what have we done? And you think that original aim, it's no longer an aim, we've actually done it. So I think, so for me, that's a big, big success. The second one is that awareness about changing lives. I think some people are nervous about it and some people in sport and go, well, we just deliver sport, we like doing golf or we like doing this, and we're a wee bit nervous about changing lives. And then you start to have a conversation with them and you realise, because clubs and organisations deliver sport, are people focused. You create relationships. You care. Sport cares about people. Then you realise you actually are doing changing lives. We just didn't give it a name. You actually care about the people that comes to your club. You care about the people that use your sport. And that so what we're just asking you to do is just kind of widen your gaze on that and continue to capture some of those stories to show that actually, as well as taking part in golf, that you're changing those people's life as well for the better. They're feeling better, they're more engaged with the community feels better as well. The club's a vital part of the infrastructure and doing that. I saw that happening during COVID and the pandemic, where sport just pivoted and just became changing lives and did that. So that would be my kind of thing to the sport. Is like you're probably likely already doing it. You might not know you're doing it.
Okay. And the very final question I wanted to ask you was, if you think forward 10 years from now, we don't know what we'll be doing at that point.
I hope I'm on a beach somewhere.
If you think forward 10 years from now, what would you love to hear about the legacy of the programme in terms of the delivery landscape in Scotland? So the sport, physical activity space in Scotland, what would you like that legacy to look like?
I think the first thing I would like is that there would be no changing lives. And I know that sounds strange, but actually this is about an embedded approach. So this would just be the way sport is delivered. So the delivery of sport captures everything. It delivers elite performance and elite pathways. It delivers competition, but it also delivers for people who just want to have fun and meet other people. People like me who take part in paddle tennis twice a week and just do it for the fun of enjoying it. Sport can do all that. I would like that is recognised in its fullest, that those parts of it are all part of it, and that funders respond to that as well, and that actually over the next 10 years we've grown and the infrastructure around organisations in sport that know that they all not have to, but they've also able to change their lives through the sport as well as do the competition side of things. So I really like to see that just becomes the norm. You know, that actually sport, we can deal with antisocial behaviour, we can deal with isolation, we can deal with well-being, we can deal with inclusion, we can do that in communities, and we're sitting at the table doing it and out in the field doing it as well.
That's brilliant. Brilliant ambition for everything. Thank you so much for your time
thank
today.
you, Sarah.
I really enjoyed it, and I
too.
hope it's been useful for everyone
absolutely.
watching or
It's
listening.
nice to kind of reflect and look back and just look ahead, I suppose.
It's been great, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Tara.
Brilliant.